The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Keanu Reeves sat in his kitchen, drinking his black coffee. He was looking through his emails. There were messages about movies, invitations to charity events, and letters from fans. But one email caught his attention. The subject line said, "Exclusive invitation, a candid conversation on the Victoria Harper Show." Keanu's eyes scanned the message. Victoria Harper was one of the most famous talk show hosts in America. Her show was known for talking about serious and sometimes tricky topics. She asked tough questions, especially to famous Hollywood actors. Keanu knew this. He knew this invitation wasn't just a simple talk. But he took another sip of his coffee, thought for a moment, and then typed his response. "I'd be honored." At the Victoria Harper Show studio, the producers gathered around a big whiteboard. They were making plans. Victoria sat at her desk, flipping through her question cards. "He's an easy target," one of the producers, Jake, said with a smirk. "Keanu Reeves? Seriously? People love that guy," another producer replied. Victoria rolled her eyes. "Exactly. That's why it will work. Everyone thinks he's the perfect nice guy. But Hollywood is changing. We need new stories, new faces. If we can make him look old-fashioned, like he belongs in the past, we win." She tossed a card onto the table. "We'll make him seem outdated. If he falls into the trap, we'll use that moment to go viral." Jake nodded. "And if he fights back?" Victoria smirked. "Then we make sure people see only the worst part." On the day of the interview, Keanu arrived on his black motorcycle. He was calm just like always. Some crew members whispered as he walked past them. Some were excited, others weren't sure what to expect. Even the security guard at the door smiled. "Big fan, Mr. Reeves," the guard said. Keanu gave a small nod. "Thanks, man." Inside, Victoria's team was busy setting up. The cameras had to be at the right angles. The audience had to be the perfect mix. Some true fans and some people ready to challenge him. Every little detail was planned to tell a certain story. But Keanu? He just took his seat across from Victoria. He sat calmly, his hands resting in his lap. Victoria greeted him with a big smile. The red light on the camera blinked. "Keanu Reeves, welcome to the show." And just like that, the trap was set. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Her voice was warm, too warm. "Let's start with something simple. What do you think about the future of Hollywood?" Keanu smiled, the same gentle, calm smile he always had. But what no one knew, not Victoria, not the producers, not even the audience, was that Keanu had already figured out what was happening. He knew this wasn't just an interview. And in just a few minutes he was going to turn it all around. The studio lights were perfect. The cameras framed Victoria and Keanu in the best way possible. Keanu looked like an old-school Hollywood star. And Victoria? She was ready to break that image apart piece by piece. Behind the cameras, the producers watched closely. This wasn't just a talk, it was a setup. Victoria smiled sweetly, the kind of smile that makes people feel safe. "Keanu, thank you so much for being here." "It's an honor." Keanu gave a small nod. "The pleasure's mine." The audience clapped softly. The mood was still light. Victoria leaned in. "You've had such an amazing career. You've been an action hero, a serious actor, even a romantic lead. And somehow people just love you." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "I've been lucky." Victoria chuckled and shook her head. "Luck maybe. But let's be honest. You represent a certain type of man in Hollywood. A certain kind of masculinity." Keanu's face didn't change, but he felt it. The shift. The first move. Victoria's voice was light, almost playful. "Hollywood is changing, Keanu. The time of the strong, silent action hero seems to be ending." She paused, watching him carefully. "Do you think actors like you still have a place in the future of movies?" Keanu leaned back slightly. The room was quiet. Then he smiled. "I think stories change, but values don't." Victoria's smile twitched. "Values?" Keanu nodded. "Courage, loyalty, standing up for what's right. Those things never go out of style. The way we tell those stories might change, but why we tell them doesn't." The audience shifted slightly. Victoria noticed. She needed to push harder. Victoria's smile tightened. She flipped through her cards quickly. Enough small talk. It was time for the real attack. "Keanu, you've played some of the most famous action heroes ever. Neo, John Wick. Strong, powerful, fearless men. But isn't that part of the problem?" Keanu raised an eyebrow. Victoria leaned in. "Don't you think these kinds of roles show an outdated idea of masculinity? One that glorifies violence, revenge, and never showing weakness?" The audience was silent. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked between Keanu and Victoria, sensing the tension rising. Behind the cameras, the producers smiled. This was it. The sound bites. If Keanu got defensive, if he got angry, they had their viral moment. But Keanu just smiled. He looked at Victoria. Then at the audience. His face was calm, impossible to read. Then, in the most effortless tone, he said, "Well, that's an interesting way to look at it." Pause. Victoria leaned forward. The entire room waited. Because in the next few seconds, Keanu Reeves was about to flip this entire interview upside down. The silence stretched. Victoria sat still, waiting for Keanu to falter, to hesitate, to get nervous. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled. A calm, easy smile. A smile that held more power than 1,000 words. The audience leaned in. The producers held their breath. And then Keanu spoke. That's an interesting way to look at it. His voice was steady, unwavering. Victoria raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. And he did. But I don't think telling stories about courage, sacrifice, and protecting the people you love is a bad thing. Do you? Victoria's smile faltered, just a little. The audience shifted. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't angry. He had turned the question back on her. And now she had to answer. Victoria laughed lightly, hiding her discomfort. Of course not. But let's be honest, Keanu. A lot of your movies focus on violence. Don't you think that affects people? Keanu nodded slowly as if he were truly thinking about it. Then he leaned forward. His voice was softer but firm. Do you think stories should stop showing conflict? Victoria hesitated. Keanu didn't move. Because if we remove every story that includes struggle, redemption, and yes, even violence, then what's left? The audience murmured. Victoria blinked. That's not what I'm saying. Keanu smiled again. But this time there was an edge to it. Then what are you saying? Behind the cameras, Victoria's team panicked. This wasn't going as planned. Keanu didn't do what they expected. He didn't get tricked by their words. Instead, he made them explain their own ideas. And the more he spoke, the more the people watching started to think about what was really happening. Some crossed their arms. Others looked at each other, wondering what was going on. Keanu saw it. Victoria saw it too, and she didn't like it at all. Victoria forced a big smile. She sat up straight. She had to take back control of the talk. So she changed the subject. Keanu, people love you because you're kind and humble, she said. But in your movies, you always play tough guys who fight a lot. Isn't that the opposite of who you are? Keanu tilted his head a little. Why would it be? Victoria blinked. She didn't expect that answer. Keanu kept going. Are you saying that kind people can't protect others? Boom. The audience reacted. Victoria paused for a moment, too long. The people behind the cameras got nervous. They wanted to cut to a commercial, but Keanu wasn't done. Keanu looked at the audience. His voice was calm and steady. I was taught that kindness and strength are not opposites. He waited a moment. Standing up for what's right doesn't mean you're mean. It means you care. The room was different now. Victoria felt it. Keanu felt it. The power was changing. The people behind the cameras whispered to each other, trying to fix things. But it was too late. Keanu had control now, and he wasn't going to let go. The room went quiet. Everyone was waiting for what would happen next. Victoria had thought Keanu would get upset or nervous. Maybe he would get defensive. But he didn't. He just gave her a small smile and said one simple thing that made everything even more tense. Keanu leaned back a little, still relaxed. That's an interesting way to see it. Victoria waited for him to say more. Keanu folded his hands together. But I see it differently. Victoria kept her face still, but inside she felt annoyed. Oh, and how is that? Keanu's voice was gentle but serious. If protecting the people we love, if standing up for what's right, if fighting against bad things makes someone toxic. He stopped for a moment. Then with a small shrug he said, then I'm happy to be toxic. The audience whispered. Some nodded. Others looked at each other, unsure. Even the people behind the cameras hesitated. This wasn't what they had planned. Victoria let out a little laugh and shook her head. That's a nice way to put it, Keanu, but let's talk about the facts. She looked at her cards and spoke in a sharper voice. Your movies, John Wick, The Matrix, Speed, they're all about fighting. A man solving problems with his fists or guns. Don't you think that sends the wrong message? Keanu tilted his head. He thought about her words. Then he said, I think stories are about more than what happens on the outside. Victoria frowned. Keanu leaned forward a little. What matters isn't what my characters do, but why they do it. He took a slow breath, choosing his next words carefully. I was raised by my mom. The audience got quiet again. Even Victoria seemed surprised by the sudden change in topic. Keanu continued, I saw her work harder than anyone I knew. I saw her struggle. I saw her sacrifice. And I saw her protect me. He paused. She taught me that strength isn't about power. It's about responsibility. It's about standing up for people who can't always stand up for themselves. Victoria opened her mouth, but Keanu wasn't done. And the men who taught me martial arts? They taught me the same thing. That real strength isn't about hurting people. He looked right at her. It's about knowing when not to. The room was completely still. Victoria laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. She could feel herself losing control of the talk. Keanu wasn't playing along with her plan. In fact, he was breaking it apart little by little. She cleared her throat. That's a beautiful idea, Keanu, but in the end your movies are about revenge, fighting, and anger. Don't you think Hollywood should move away from that? Keanu thought about her words. Then he softly said, I think Hollywood should move toward truth. Victoria frowned. Keanu looked at the audience. People don't watch John Wick because they want to see fighting. His voice was calm, thoughtful. They watch it because they understand loss. They understand sadness. They understand wanting to protect something important. He paused. That's not toxic. That's human. The audience shifted again. Victoria could feel it. She was losing them. Victoria's heart beat fast. She needed to fix this. She looked at her producers. They were signaling her to change the topic. This wasn't going the way they had planned. So she made a choice. One she would soon regret. She leaned in and said, Keanu, do you really believe that? Or is this just another Hollywood script? The audience gasped. And Keanu just smiled. Because Victoria had just made her biggest mistake yet. Her words hung in the air. Keanu, do you really believe that? Or is this just another Hollywood script? The audience shifted in their seats. Some people whispered. They could feel the change in the room. The people in the control room leaned forward, waiting to see what would happen. They wanted Keanu to get upset. They wanted drama. But instead, Keanu stayed calm. His face didn't change at all. Then he let out a small laugh. A Hollywood script? He tapped his fingers on his knee, taking his time. Then he said, No. I don't think truth needs a script. Victoria's smile got smaller. Keanu looked at her, his voice still steady. But I do think some people mix up conversation and confrontation. The audience got quiet again. Victoria blinked. Keanu continued, I thought we were here to have a conversation. He tilted his head. But it feels like you came here looking for something else. Victoria's face turned red. A few people in the crowd gasped. This was not what was supposed to happen. She needed to fix this, fast. Victoria laughed again, but it sounded weaker. She grabbed her cue cards, flipping through them fast. She had to change her plan. She had to make Keanu look like he didn't belong anymore. So she tried something new. Keanu, you've had an amazing career, she said sweetly. But the movie world is changing. Wouldn't you agree that it's time for new voices? New stories? Maybe even new faces? Keanu raised an eyebrow. Victoria kept going. People have been talking about older actors stepping aside to make room for the next generation. Do you think maybe it's time for you to do the same? The audience went still again. Some people looked at Keanu. Others looked at Victoria, realizing what she had just said. She wasn't really asking about Hollywood. She was telling Keanu that maybe it was time for him to go. Keanu Reeves was on a talk show. The host, Victoria Harper, tried to trick him. She wanted him to look bad. But Keanu was smart. He didn't fall for it. Instead, he smiled. Then, in a calm voice, he said, When I was a kid, I learned to respect people who came before us. But today, it seems like respect is a choice. The room went silent. Nobody moved. Even the people working behind the camera stopped what they were doing. Victoria's smile disappeared. She tried to laugh, but it sounded fake. She knew she had lost. Keanu didn't yell. He didn't argue. But he had turned her plan upside down. The audience wasn't laughing with her anymore. They were looking at Keanu. Some were already pulling out their phones to record the moment. Victoria looked around for help. She glanced at her producers, hoping they would tell her what to do. But it was too late. The world was already watching. The clip of Keanu's words was spreading fast online. The moment was like the last note of a beautiful song. No one had expected Keanu to say something so powerful. The studio was quiet. The audience leaned forward, watching closely. Many were recording. Victoria's face changed. She wasn't in control of her own show anymore, and she knew it. When the show went to a commercial break, the damage was done. In the control room, the producers panicked. They shouted orders. "We need to cut this out before it airs," someone said. "It's too late. People are already posting it," another person answered. While Victoria's team tried to stop the situation, the internet had already taken over. Within minutes, the clip was all over Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. People were sharing it with hashtags like #RespectSNTOptional, #KeanuDidn'tFlinch, and #VictoriaHarperExposed. Comment sections were full of reactions. Keanu just won with one sentence. He didn't even raise his voice. She tried to trap him, but she looked like a fool instead. This is how you handle a trick question. Absolute class. People all over the internet talked about it. They broke down every second of the moment. Influencers joined the conversation. News channels started reporting on it. And Victoria? She was now caught in the type of viral storm she usually created for others. Back in the studio, Victoria's team was still trying to fix things. Her assistant ran up to her and whispered, "Victoria, the clip is everywhere." Victoria clenched her jaw. She forced a smile and took a sip of water. She had wanted this interview to go viral, but not like this. She didn't want to look weak. She had to fix this fast. When the show returned from the break, the cameras rolled. Victoria took a deep breath and forced a laugh. "Well, Keanu, that sure was an exciting talk," she said, trying to change the mood. Keanu just smiled. Victoria turned to the camera and said, "Folks, we'll keep this conversation going online. Don't forget to subscribe." But it was too late. People weren't listening to her anymore. They were listening to Keanu. And he didn't even need to say another word. By the end of the night, the interview wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. News channels played it over and over. Experts analyzed it. Some defended Victoria, saying she was just asking tough questions. But others saw what really happened. She tried to trap him, and Keanu turned it into a lesson in kindness. There's a reason people love this guy. He doesn't play media games. Victoria Harper thought she could outsmart him, but she forgot who she was dealing with. Victoria had to watch as her reputation fell apart. For once, she couldn't control the story. And things were about to get even worse. The next morning, Victoria walked into her office. Her assistant was waiting for her, holding a phone. She looked nervous. "Victoria, we have a problem." Victoria sighed and rubbed her temples. "What now?" Her assistant turned the phone around. A new video was trending. It showed Keanu Reeves walking out of a small cafe. A reporter ran up to him with a microphone. "Keanu, do you have anything to say about your interview with Victoria Harper?" Keanu smiled. Then, in the calmest voice, he said, "Gentleness never goes out of style." The video ended. Victoria's heart sank. In just 6 words, Keanu had said everything. And now there was nothing she could do to stop it. Victoria Harper looked at her computer screen. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. A video of Keanu Reeves had been watched over 5 million times in less than one day. People everywhere were talking about it. And it was all because of just 6 simple words. Gentleness never goes out of style. Now those words were everywhere. Social media was filled with people talking about them. A new hashtag started trending, #GentlenessWins. People shared funny pictures and short videos of Keanu smiling at Victoria during their interview. One special moment was shared over and over again. The moment Keanu said those words outside a cafe. On TikTok, a new challenge started. People would take moments when things got tense or difficult and reply with, "Gentleness never goes out of style." It was like magic. Those words made people stop and think. It wasn't just a video anymore. It was bigger than that. It was a movement. But Keanu Reeves? He wasn't even online. He didn't post anything about it. He didn't respond. He just went on living his life. That made people love him even more. Hollywood noticed. Some famous actors and directors thought Keanu was amazing for what he said. Others took Victoria's side, saying she was only doing her job. But the people, millions of them, had already chosen Keanu as the winner. It wasn't just about the interview anymore. It was about kindness. And Keanu had shown it. Victoria, though, wasn't happy. She didn't want to just sit back and let this happen. She decided to fight back. She made her own video to respond to what people were saying. "I have nothing but respect for Keanu Reeves," she said. "But let's be honest, his fans took this out of context. I was just doing my job." She paused for a moment and then added, "If people can't handle a little healthy debate, maybe the real problem isn't masculinity. Maybe it's fragility." Boom. That was her big move. She thought she could turn things around and change the way people saw the situation. She pressed the upload button and waited. At first, some people supported her. They agreed with her. They said things like, "She's right." Keanu didn't even answer her question, and, "Why does everyone treat Keanu like a perfect angel?" But then something changed. More people started replying, "She lost the argument and now she's blaming Keanu for being too nice?" Just like that, Victoria's plan backfired. Instead of helping her, her video made things worse. The next day, 3 big companies that supported her show decided to leave. They didn't want to be part of the controversy. Her bosses at the TV network called an emergency meeting. And then an email popped up in her inbox. Urgent. Meeting about the future of the Victoria Harper show. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just about a simple internet trend. This could end her entire career. And she had no idea what to do next. While Victoria was panicking, Keanu still said nothing. No posts. No statements. No interviews. He just kept living his life like nothing had happened. And that made things even worse for Victoria. Because every time someone tried to bring him into the argument, people just replied with his words. Gentleness never goes out of style. The internet had already decided. Keanu had won. And Victoria? She was only making things worse for herself. That afternoon, a reporter found Keanu outside a bookstore. "Keanu, do you have any final words about the Victoria Harper interview?" the reporter asked. Keanu was holding a cup of coffee. He paused for a moment, then smiled. "I think we should all try listening more than we speak." That was all he said. Just one simple sentence. But once again it was enough. The video went viral immediately. Millions of people shared it. And for Victoria Harper, it was the final nail in the coffin. Victoria Harper had built her whole career by asking tough questions and making Hollywood celebrities feel uncomfortable. She thought Keanu Reeves would be just another easy target. But she had been wrong. During the interview she tried to push him. She wanted him to admit that his characters, strong silent men, were outdated. But Keanu didn't take the bait. He stayed calm. He answered with respect and kindness. And then, with just one simple sentence, he turned the whole conversation around. "When I was a kid, I was taught that respect for those who came before us was essential. It's interesting how today respect seems optional." At that moment, everything changed. The audience felt it. Victoria lost control. Within hours, the interview spread all over the internet. People analyzed every second of it. More hashtags started trending. Hashtag respect isn't optional, hashtag Keanu didn't flinch, hashtag gentleness wins. Then another video of Keanu appeared. This time he was leaving a cafe when a reporter asked him about the controversy. His answer was the same. Gentleness never goes out of style. That was all it took. People made memes, TikTok videos. They turned his words into life mottos. And Victoria Harper? She was stuck in the storm. The backlash didn't stop. 3 more sponsors left. The number of people watching her show dropped. Her bosses told her she needed to fix things fast. On her next episode, she tried to do damage control. She looked at the camera and said, "I regret if my words were misinterpreted." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest she could bring herself to saying sorry. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Her credibility was gone. Over the next few months, her show quietly disappeared. No big announcement. No farewell episode. Just faded away. Meanwhile, Keanu? He moved on. He never once tried to fight back. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't need to. Because some battles aren't won by fighting. Some wars are won with silence. Victoria Harper tried to take down Keanu Reeves. But in the end, she only took down herself. And Keanu, without even trying, taught the world one of the most important lessons. True power doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be real. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.